Good evening. A sharp exchange unfolded today in the U.S. Senate as Republican Senator Ted Cruz and Democratic Senator Cory Booker clashed over judicial safety, political accountability, and the enforcement of federal law. At the center of the debate, whether the Biden Justice Department failed to act against protests at Supreme Court justices' homes, and whether Democrats were silent or decisive in protecting judges. The confrontation highlights deeper divisions over law enforcement, bipartisanship, and the escalating rhetoric shaping American politics. We bring you the key moments, and what they mean tonight.
We indulge you every moment.
I appreciate that act of generosity. It's just something you said that I think is actually dangerous and should be addressed, and you're welcome. But when Judge Anderol was killed in New Jersey, the Republican colleagues in the Senate, their outpouring of support, their outpouring of concern, they're willing to work together on a bipartisan bill was extraordinary. It shows the truth of this institution that, despite some of the fiery rhetoric that you were sowing, we're really a bipartisan, working bipartisanship. Cornyn and Coons, after the incidents you're talking about, got together and actually passed a bill to better protect our Supreme Court justices, many of whom are friends of ours. You know, Gorsuch and I disagree on a lot of stuff. I knew his wife before he did. We studied together at Oxford. This implication that there was silence when there were threats on their people's houses is absolutely absurd. I remember the rhetoric and the comments, the concern from Coons. I actually distinctly remember you, Chairman, on more than once condemning those attacks on Republican-appointed jurists. To say things like that feeds just the partisanship in this institution and feeds the fiery rhetoric. And it's just plain not true. It's just plain not true. And I think you know that, but we can pull from the record from my colleagues in real time, literally days afterwards, condemning it. There's a lot of substantive things to say here, but to think that the lack of humanity when people's homes are being threatened was not in existence, I think that's unfair and really concerns me that you would say that in the way that you did.
Well, I thank my colleague from New Jersey. I will note, as John Adams observed, that facts are stubborn things. And it is existing federal law, 18 U.S.C. Section 1507, that makes it a crime to protest at a judge's home. And the law provides whoever with the intent of interfering with, obstructing, or impeding the administration of justice, or with the intent or of influencing any judge, juror, witness, or court officer in the discharge of his duty, pickets or parades in or near a building housing a court of the United States, in or near a building or residence occupied or used by such judge, juror, witness, or court officer, or with such intent uses any sound truck or similar device or resorts to any other demonstration in or near any such building or residence, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. That is federal criminal law. Night after night after night, angry mobs were outside the Supreme Court justices' homes, and in the entire course of it, the Biden Justice Department prosecuted nobody. We had the Attorney General sitting at that table, and multiple Republican senators asked him, why are you not enforcing the law? What they are doing is a crime. And my friend from New Jersey said, it is a lie to say we, the Democrats, condone this. I would challenge, my friend, find a single Democrat senator on this committee holding the Attorney General to account for not enforcing this law. I was here at those hearings, and I do not recall a single Democrat senator saying to the Attorney General, you should arrest these people who are violating the law, you should protect the judges. I agree that there was general language against violence, but not a single Democrat senator that I ever saw in this committee was willing to hold Attorney General Merrick Garland to account for flagrantly disregarding the federal criminal law because the Biden administration agreed with the protesters and I think wanted those justices harassed at their home.
I really appreciate that you've now shifted the accusation you made earlier. Your accusation was that we were silent in the face of protests at Supreme Court justices' homes. Again, we joined together in a bipartisan way, not only to condemn that, but to pass legislation to extend round-the-clock security protection, literally days. It was introduced May 5th, passed the Senate in a bipartisan fashion on May 9th. So if you're saying that we didn't criticize
Did the
Merrick
Biden
Garland,
DOJ arrest a single person under this law?
You are now changing the
No, that is what I said. That is what I said.
Again, I'll pull the record.
Did the Biden DOJ arrest even one?
Again,
the answer is no.
My point to you is the accusation that the Democrats on this committee do not care about the safety of federal judges. I did not interrupt you, sir. I would appreciate if you let me finish. I am sick and tired of hearing the kind of heated partisan rhetoric, which is one of the reasons why we have such divisions in this country. The attacks we see from the President of the United States of America trolling and dragging judges through is what we should be talking about, that puts people in danger. I'm simply taking issue with the claim that you made at the top that people on the Democratic side of the aisle do not care about the safety and the security of judges and said nothing. You said we were silent after people's houses were protested. That is a patent lie, sir. We were not silent. We took action. We joined in a bipartisan way to protect those judges, as was done in a bipartisan way to protect a New Jersey judge after their horrific attack at their home. So I see you now trying to shift the debate to whether we talk to an attorney general. I'm simply taking issue with this accusation that somehow we Democrats are so bad because we don't call out threats to our colleagues.
This debate between Senator Ted Cruz and Senator Cory Booker is not just a personal clash, it's a microcosm of the broader political and institutional tension in Washington today. At its core, both senators agree on one fundamental principle: threats against judges are unacceptable, and judicial independence must be protected. Where they diverge, sharply, is accountability and enforcement. Senator Ted Cruz anchors his argument in existing federal law, specifically 18 U.S.C. Section 1507, which clearly criminalizes protests intended to influence judges at their residences. Cruz's most forceful claim is not that Democrats supported violence, but that the Biden Justice Department failed to enforce the law, despite repeated violations occurring in plain view. From Cruz's perspective, this is not a rhetorical issue, it's a rule of law failure. His challenge is direct and confrontational. If the law exists and is being broken, why was no one arrested? By repeatedly emphasizing not a single arrest, Cruz frames the issue as selective justice driven by political convenience. Senator Cory Booker, however, reframes the debate entirely. Rather than focusing on prosecutions, Booker points to bipartisan legislative action, particularly the swift passage of enhanced security protections for Supreme Court justices. His argument is institutional and moral. Democrats were not silent, they acted. He rejects Cruz's assertion as not merely incorrect, but dangerous, warning that claims of indifference only fuel public mistrust and deepen partisan division. Booker's strongest moment comes when he labels the accusation a patent lie, a rare escalation in Senate decorum, underscoring how personally and politically damaging such claims can be. To Booker, the real threat is not only protests, but inflammatory rhetoric that delegitimizes institutions and puts officials at further risk. What's critical here is what both senators are talking past. Cruz is arguing execution of law. Booker is arguing proof of concern through action. Both positions can technically coexist, and that's what makes this exchange so revealing. The Senate did act quickly and in a bipartisan manner to extend protection to judges. That is a documented fact. At the same time, it is also true that the Department of Justice did not pursue prosecutions under Section 1507, raising legitimate questions about consistency in enforcement. Politically, this debate reflects a larger trend. Republicans are increasingly framing DOJ decisions as politicized non-enforcement. Democrats are emphasizing de-escalation, institutional unity, and legislative solutions. Neither side is fully addressing the public's growing concern: if laws are enforced selectively, trust erodes, regardless of intent. Perhaps the most consequential takeaway is this: when judicial safety becomes a partisan battlefield, the judiciary itself risks becoming collateral damage. The exchange shows how rhetoric, even when rooted in facts, can inflame rather than resolve. In the end, this was not just a debate about protests or prosecutions, it was a debate about who gets to define responsibility in American governance, and whether accountability is measured by what we say, what we pass, or what we enforce. And that question remains unresolved.